Welcome to the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. Have a question for the show or need assistance with your retirement plan? Give Philip a call today. 863-285-3815. 863-285-3815.
With everything going on in the world right now, your finances need to be able to weather any financial storm. We'll talk about some of the major financial risks on the horizon today, and we'll also talk a little bit about some of the all-weather strategies to help you protect your savings no matter what kind of storms are unfolding in the financial world. This is going to be a great show today. And Philip, I guess you could say, as we progress through a lengthy retirement, we're going to go through different economic seasons, as it were. So we'll talk a little bit about how to weather some of those different changes in our economic climate. But looking forward to our discussion today.
Yeah, it is. It is one of those things that everybody, when they retire at a different point in time. And so depending upon when they retire, kind of depends upon what their facts and circumstances look at for the future. And so that's why it's so important that we have this all-weather portfolio in place that is going to weather whatever is happening at the time you decide to retire.
Right, because there are some factors in our current economic climate that are just making retirement planning even more challenging, and people aren't sure how to offset inflation in the future. They aren't sure how much income Social Security could provide. They aren't sure how much they can safely withdraw from their retirement savings. So you might say these factors, Philip, combined with increasing healthcare costs and tax increases, these things make up what we could call the perfect storm for retirees, right?
It really does, especially you talk about taxes. I mean, I think that it's one of those things that we really haven't had to worry about for a while because tax rates have been so low, but that's changing. And so I think at this point, folks need to have that more on their radar than they ever have before. I mean, inflation, that's something that we're dealing with pretty much now, but taxes are coming, and we need to make sure we're ready when that new wave comes of tax increases.
Right, absolutely. So, and we will get to that here in just a few moments as well. I want to start with the fact that we have continued to see higher than normal inflation. Now, of course, Philip, it's cooled a little bit. It's not quite as crazy as it was right after we came out of the pandemic, but the reality is people aren't really sure how much income growth is needed to offset inflation. One of the good things about having this become such a front and center issue, Philip, is people are aware of it. They know they have to do something about it, but they're not quite sure just what they should do. The Insured Retirement Institute surveyed working adults and found that only 26% of workers could correctly identify the level of income growth that would be necessary to offset normal inflation. And you look at what we would call normal inflation, around 3%. Even under normal inflation, if you have $60,000 of income at the age 65, when you get to 75, you need around $80,000 to maintain the same buying power. So do people recognize just how much it takes to keep up with inflation over the course of their retirement?
I don't think they really do. And if you think about it, you said 3%, and I look back over the last 20 years, and I don't know that we had a year that it got much over 3% in the last 20, 25 years. So, that's one of the issues is we've been lulled into this low inflation environment. Mm-hmm. If our inflation rate's 2.5%, that's on the extreme side, right? But now we've got clobbered with these high inflation numbers. I mean, you got to go back 40 years to see inflation this way. So I think that people have become complacent, and this kind of woke them up and said, okay, how long is this going to go on? Mm-hmm. And that becomes an issue. So we have to have a plan in place that's going to help deal with that. You're talking about from 60 to 80,000 in a 10-year period of time. Well, people are going to live more than 10 years in retirement. So what's the next 10 years going to look like, right?
Yeah.
And so that just kind of snowballs down the road. And we want to make sure that we've got a plan that's going to help deal with that inflationary numbers.
So what are some of the things that we can do, Philip, when we're looking for solutions here to help us address things like inflation? What are some of the tools at our disposal to help us deal with this?
I think the biggest one, and it's one that probably scares people the most when I sit down with them, is we need to have some exposure to the stock market, especially here lately. It seems like that's what people don't want to do right now. And so when we look at the stock market, that's what's going to help us keep up with inflation. I know it doesn't always feel like it, but over the long term, that piece of the pie is what's going to help us get through that process. I mean, I talk about a lot in our workshops that there's really kind of three buckets of money you need. You need growth, which is going to come from the markets. You need safety, which is fixed income, fixed annuities, that kind of thing. And then on top of that, the third one, you need liquidity. I mean, you need some money in all those buckets. And that's really our job, is to figure out how much should be in each of those buckets so that you've got the retirement you always dreamed of.
Tell me a little bit about, Philip, for people who have questions and they want to learn, maybe get some of their initial questions answered. They want to start learning about some of the strategies that might make the most sense for them. Tell me a little bit about your process for helping people get started.
Absolutely, Jen. So we have what we call our core retirement design. It's our process that we've trademarked to go through and make sure that folks have a lot of things covered, right? Risk. How much risk is in your portfolio? Your income, making sure you got an income plan in place. And then taxes, conversion, Roth conversions, that type of thing. How can we be a good steward of what we have and keep as much of it and let the tax man get as little as possible? That's really our process. And so what we do is we offer a 30-minute, no obligation phone call where we'll sit down and answer your questions on the phone or a Zoom meeting, either one. Answer your questions, make sure that you're on the path you need to be on to have that retirement you always dreamed of. Again, there's no cost, no obligation, 30 minutes of our time. Ask questions, we'll give you the answers, and then we'll make sure that you're on that path. Give us a call, 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815 to schedule your core retirement analysis phone conversation.
Talking today with Philip Statler. He is the president and CEO of Statler Financial Services in Sebring, and I am Jen Rezac alongside. And as we talk a little bit about that, Philip, I'm so glad you brought up this idea of these different buckets of money and finding this balance between growth and preservation. And this is another area where I think people have a hard time knowing how to find that balance. U.S. News and World Report says you need to recognize your fixed income might not keep up with inflation, like you were talking about. We do have, Social Security checks are automatically adjusted for inflation, but that's probably not going to be enough. So what we do need to find is a little bit of growth in some different places. And you pointed out that people do get a little bit nervous about this, but there's a balance here. So let's talk a little bit about maybe some factors to keep in mind, Philip, when we're trying to find that right balance. Do we start with looking at our age or our horizon for our time horizon for retirement? How do we start figuring out what the right balance is so we can keep up with inflation but not overdo it with risk?
Gotcha. So what we do is we start with the rule of 100.
Okay.
Right. So the rule of 100 says, hey, look, we're going to take 100 minus your age. And that would be an initial look at, here's how much risk you should have. So let's say you're 65 years old. So 100 minus 65 means 35% is about what you should look at having in equities in the stock market. Now, I tell people, look, that's not a hard and fast number. We could be 10% to the higher side, 10% to the lower side, but that's the range we need to look at when we start to look at that process of how much should I have at risk. And then we have folks that are more risk adverse than others, and so sometimes we've got to make a few more adjustments. But that's a good rule of thumb, Jen.
And I think that is a good place to start, a rule of thumb. But there's more to it than just going off of a rule of thumb. That's when, after we've kind of made some of those initial determinations, Philip, then we start getting into a little bit more of a customized approach here, right? When you're helping people put together their plans.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and we'll talk about more, I'm sure, a little later in the show, but income planning.
Yes.
And so that really is what drives how folks' money gets invested. And so everybody's income plan is different. And so how much ends up in equities versus protection versus liquidity is going to be different for that person. And we're going to look at several things. One is your health. Look at your health. Mm-hmm. We'll look at your risk tolerance. We'll look at the longevity in your family. We'll look at those type of things to determine what that needs to look like for you. And a lot of it is that rule of 100 plus the risk tolerance process that we go through. It really drives home the amount of risk we need to have in the portfolio in terms of especially how much distribution do we need out of our portfolio on a regular basis. So all those things come into play with that income plan, and that really drives how we allocate that portfolio.
So let's talk again a little bit about, I know you shared with us a few moments ago how we get started, but talk about what the first step is here as we are trying to figure out what is the right balance with between growth and safety with our income, as we're trying to figure out what tools make the most sense for us to use for our income strategy for retirement. Tell us about your process for helping people get started.
Inflation is... I wouldn't say it at an all-time high, but it feels like an all-time high for most of us, right? And so you take that plus taxes going up in 2 or 3 years automatically, not including other things they're going to have to do. All these things start adding up, meaning that you need to have a plan in place. And that's where we developed our core retirement design. To make it easy for folks, we want to make sure that we're available. It's hard sometimes to get to the office. And sometimes, when you don't have everything you need. And so we developed our core retirement phone consultation, where we'll give you 30 minutes of our time and we'll talk through, we'll answer whatever questions you may have. We'll look at where you are right now and let you know if you're on the right path, if there's things that you may need to tweak, some things you could be changing, or if you need to reverse course altogether. You're going to get our opinion of where you are and what you need to be doing from that point forward. We call that our core retirement phone consultation. And that's the starting point for everybody. We start there. And then if we're all on the right page, then we'll sit down and walk through our core retirement analysis. And that's the second phase. Look, you need a plan. And that's what the core retirement design does. Give us a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815 to get started on the core retirement design to help design the retirement you always dreamed of.
That number one more time, 863-285-3815. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show. High inflation, the possibility of higher taxes are common themes in today's economic climate. And we'll continue talking about that on the other side of the break. One of the most important things you can do to help protect yourself against these things, though, rising prices, is to get the most out of your Social Security. So we'll get into that on the other side. Stay with us.
In times of volatility, the only wrong move is not making one. Call Philip and the team at Statler Financial Services today and find out where you currently stand with your portfolio. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
Remember that first paycheck when you started working all those years ago and you looked at the net amount and thought, whoa, what happened here? Well, it could be this way with your retirement accounts. You know how much you've saved, but if you haven't planned for Uncle Sam, you could come up short in retirement. With tax laws constantly changing, there's a lot you need to know to make sure you're not paying more than your fair share. Philip Statler and the Statler Financial Team have helped hundreds of families plan for retirement for more than 20 years. They'll help you create a plan that shows you how taxes could affect you now and in the future. Set up a visit with Philip Statler and the team at Statler Financial. Just give them a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Make sure you know how these changes could affect you so you can avoid some of those whoa moments in retirement. Call 863-285-3815. Firm offers insurance services but may not give tax advice. Advisory services are offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
Time to retire right. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services in Sebring. High inflation and the possibility of higher taxes, those are pretty common themes in today's economic climate. And according to The Balance, one of the most important things you can do to help protect yourself against rising prices is to get the most out of your Social Security benefits. That is another key component of what we're calling our all-weather retirement income strategy. And the whole idea there, Philip, is the fact that retirements last a long time. You're going to see all sorts of different economic seasons that happen. You might see markets growing or market pullbacks. You might see times of higher inflation, times of lower inflation. So how can we put together a plan that can weather all of those different financial climates and financial situations and financial storms?
Like you said, in this segment, we're going to talk a lot about Social Security.
Yeah.
And I think that if folks really think about it, so many people don't realize how much their benefit's going to actually be. Mm-hmm. They don't take the time to look. Social Security doesn't automatically send out that statement, anymore like they used to.
Okay.
They are mailing some out, but now folks can go online themselves, create an account with Social Security, and have immediate access to their Social Security statement that will say, hey, look, if you retire at 62, this is what you're going to get. If you retire at 65, 67, 70, it gives you the numbers based on you continuing to earn the amount of income you're earning right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that folks need to take the time to look at that every year. You need to look at it for a couple of reasons. One is you want to make sure all your earnings are there, right? Because it lists out the last 30 years of your earnings. You want to make sure that you're not missing a year because that can impact your Social Security benefit. So I think the first thing folks need to do is really pull that statement, because that's going to give them a better idea of how much they're going to receive when they retire from Social Security. Because we talk about the three-legged stool that is really no longer a three-legged stool for most people. And that is your income's going to come from Social Security. Your income's going to come not so much anymore, from a pension, but a lot of folks don't have a pension anymore. And so that means the rest of your income has to come from you. Mm-hmm. And you need to be prepared for that. And that's all part of our process of really putting together that income plan for folks, because we look at Social Security as a big part of that.
Right. Absolutely. So important that we have a good handle, to your point, about what our benefits will be, because so many people, you're right, Philip, they don't have a good handle on this. And I'm guessing if you are overestimating, if you're anticipating higher benefits, and that's what you're banking on, that could leave you with a gap in your ability to cover your expenses. So we definitely don't want to be in that camp. We talked about inflation a little bit earlier. There are cost of living adjustments that do happen pretty regularly with Social Security. We've certainly seen more of those and a little bit higher in recent years. And we're talking increases of 5%, 8%, that type of thing. So we've seen some pretty substantial increases in the cost of living adjustment with Social Security, but are we still losing buying power because it's not truly keeping up with inflation and not truly keeping up with everything? I mean, it still leaves us with a bit of a shortfall if we're just banking on those increases, right?
Absolutely, Jen. Because let's face it, Social Security uses a different measure for inflation than you and I do when we go to the grocery store, the gas station, or some other way. And so they use a different metrics for that. And you're right. We've seen some really big increases the last couple of years because inflation has been so high. But I can remember when there were years that they didn't get hardly anything added to their check. Matter of fact, when they took into consideration Medicare premiums went up, they actually went backwards in what they were getting. So I think it's important that they know what that number looks like. But the biggest thing is, when do they take it? When do you start taking your Social Security? I feel like a lot of times, Jen, so many people are just going to take it at the first opportunity. Mm-hmm. And that can be a big mistake, Right. You need to have a plan that really shows you all the different options when it comes to Social Security to determine which one makes the most sense for you. I see people that are still working that take their Social Security. There are so many, I call kind of mistakes that I see when it comes to Social Security that I hate to see it. Folks can put together a plan that incorporates what that Social Security benefit is going to be into their whole income situation. And that's why income planning is so important. And again, that's why that's part of our core retirement design, is to help people have the income they're going to need and know what that's going to be. Not just today, but 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road. How much income am I going to be getting in? Folks, that's why we developed our core retirement design. Give us a call. Folks, we'll give you 30 minutes on the phone, answer questions you may have. Give us a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815 to schedule your core retirement phone consultation. 30 minutes, we'll answer your questions. Make sure you're on the path you need to be on for the retirement you always dreamed of.
That number again, 863-285-3815. Talking today with Philip Statler. He is the president and CEO of Statler Financial Services, about some of the factors to keep in mind as we are preparing for retirement, getting the most out of your Social Security benefits. This is something that is a message for everyone. And Philip, obviously, when people come to you, they also have what they've saved in their 401ks, their IRAs. They've got this other savings. But when you look at an asset like Social Security, we just don't want to mismanage this. We want to make sure we're making the right decisions. And there's a lot of factors, especially if you're married, for example, Philip. There's some other factors to keep in mind there. We want to be coordinated. We don't want to just go in and randomly click on when we think it's time to start taking those benefits. We want to be strategic about this, right?
Absolutely, Jen. And you mentioned something right there that's very important, and that's for a married couple. And sometimes I look back and people have made a hasty decision to take Social Security, not thinking about what happens to their spouse when they pass away. And to me, I look at it from all standpoints. Looking at it now while you're alive, what does it do for you? How can we maximize it? But more importantly, what happens when a spouse passes away? And now I'm down to one Social Security. And Jen, I want that Social Security to be the biggest number I can get it. And so sometimes it makes sense to hold off taking your Social Security so that you've got that, I call it a death benefit. It's not really a death benefit, but the remaining spouse is going to get that higher value. If you're still working in 65, 66, 67, if you're still working at 68, 69, hold off. Sometimes it makes sense to not take your Social Security as early as folks want to do it. But you don't know that, right? Until you put that plan together and you can see the benefits of waiting. And they can be pretty big, Jen.
Again, this is just something that can be a substantial asset for us as we are heading into retirement, and we just don't want to be mismanaging this. And the other thing that I think is important to remember, if we have questions about this, Philip, the Social Security Administration can provide you with a lot of good information, but when it comes to helping you make a decision about timing your benefits and when to start claiming them, that's really not what they're equipped to do. That's when we do need to talk with somebody who is in this world of retirement planning.
That's right, because you call the Social Security and want them to give you advice, and there's like crickets on the other end of the telephone, right? They're not allowed to. It's not part of their job. And so they can give you the statistics or the data that's there, but they can't really help you determine when you should take your Social Security. And again, that all goes to the whole income planning aspect of having a written retirement income plan. But so many people treat it like I call it a junk drawer, right? They have a lot of stuff. They have some mutual funds over here. They have some annuities over there. They got their brokerage account, their 401k, their IRA, and they're taking money from different places, but there's no organization. There's no plan as to how they're accessing what account and when, and how long it's going to last. And to me, that's what having that income plan really does. It puts all those different things into a plan, an organization, so that you know where money's coming from, when it's coming from that bucket, how long it's going to last. And where do you go when that bucket's dry? That's what the income planning does. That's part of our core retirement design. That's why I feel it's so important that folks have that written retirement income plan, because I would bet that 90% of the folks out there don't have one.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it's important. The closer you get to retirement, the more you need to have that written retirement income plan in place, Jen.
So let's talk a little bit about the fact that so many people don't necessarily have this income plan, because what they have, Philip, is they have a bunch of stuff, right? They have their Social Security. They might have a life insurance policy. They have some savings. They might have a 401k or an IRA. They've got a bunch of stuff. Talk a little bit about the conversations you have with people to help them determine how to put all these things together, all these different pieces together into a working retirement income plan.
So the initial part really is really determining what are they going to need to take out of all their savings and investments, right? That's the $1 million question. How much am I going to need every month to make up that shortfall to help Social Security get me to where I need to be? And that's the bottom line. We need to solve for that issue. And so that's a spending problem, right? Or it may not be a problem, but it's a spending issue, right? They need to know how much they're spending on that side of the equation in order for us to really look at how much they need to take out of their portfolio to help cover the difference between that gap, as you say, between Social Security and what they're spending. And that's really the bottom line is developing that plan for that. And that's what our core retirement design does, Jen. It really walks you through that process of determining that income plan. Where do we pull from and when do we pull from it? Being as tax efficient as we can in that whole process. And so that's the deal. Give us a call, 30 minutes. We'll see if you're on the right path, see if there's anything you could be doing better or could be moving in the different direction. Give us a call, 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
This is the Statler Financial Radio Show, talking today about an all-weather retirement income strategy that's designed to help you be able to get the income you need in retirement, whether the economy is growing or pulling back. It's so important because no matter what's happening with inflation, taxes, or the economy, you will still need income in retirement. We'll continue this on the other side of the break. Stay with us.
Turn your plans of yesterday into yes today. Don't wait another day for a routine checkup of your retirement plans. Call Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
You can't see it, but you sure can feel it. The economy is struggling right now. Do you know how it might affect your retirement? Some retirement plans take into account economic downturns, stock market dips, interest rate fluctuations. Does yours? Take charge of your retirement by calling Philip Statler at 863-285-3815. Philip and his team at Statler Financial have been helping families prepare for retirement for over 20 years. They will help address the current economic situation and help you create a retirement plan designed to give you the confidence to move forward. Opportunities can exist regardless of economic conditions. Call the team, Philip Statler with Statler Financial at 863-285-3815 and find out ways you can prepare now for your retirement. Call 863-285-3815. Call them now. Schedule a visit. Let's get started. Firm offers insurance services. Advisory services are offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Welcome back to the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler and co-host Jen Rezac.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services in Sebring, talking today about an all-weather retirement income strategy that is designed to help you get the income you need in retirement, whether the economy is growing or pulling back. Because regardless of what's happening with inflation, taxes, or the economy, you will still need income in retirement. And Philip, taxes, a tax-efficient way to access your retirement savings. This is another key component of our all-weather retirement income strategy, right?
It really is. Everyone knows that they're going to need income in retirement. They got to take it from somewhere. The problem is, Jen, that so many people don't know enough about withdrawing that money from their retirement accounts and what their options are and where they could be taking it from, that they end up paying more in taxes than what they really maybe should be or could be in that whole process.
The Insured Retirement Institute conducted a study. I referenced this study earlier in the show, but not only do people have questions about how to keep pace with inflation, they're also not quite sure about how much they can take out of their retirement savings without worrying about running out of money. And not understanding this could cause you to end up taking too much money out of your account, and you run the risk of running out of money. It's just like, Philip, if you aren't sure how much Social Security benefits you're going to get, you could have a gap. Well, if you are taking out too much money and not thinking about things like taxes, that could run into some math problems for you as well.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah. And those math problems could be exacerbated if you're taking everything out of the market and the market's declining. Right. So, it used to be that they would say, hey, look, if you took 4% of your portfolio out every year, that you would be okay, that it would last your lifetime. Well, in the last 10 or 15 years, they've kind of revised that a little bit with some of the stuff that's going on in the markets, and that number's shrunk down a little bit. The 4% rule now has probably become the 2.8% rule or the 3% rule. Mm-hmm. It's because of the volatility that we've seen in the marketplace. We've seen that safe withdrawal number come down some. What we see, though, is as we develop the income planning process, that we're actually able to get that number back up closer to 4 or 5%. So using the right tools makes it possible to still get back to those numbers. But if you're taking it all out of your mutual funds, then you really should be taking less than that 4%. You should be down there probably 2.8 to 3%.
So let's talk a little bit also, Philip, about the whole implication of taxes in here also, because it's one thing to look at what we've saved and try to do some of the math and say, okay, here's how much I think I can afford to take out every year. But people often overlook taxes when they're planning those withdrawals from their retirement accounts. They might make assumptions about what kind of taxes they'll owe or not, or what tax brackets they'll be in. This is an area that could be very costly if we're making assumptions and we don't have the facts, the numbers on our side, right?
Well, that's true, because if most of your money is in your 401k or your IRA, every time you take money out, Uncle Sam's going to be wanting his share too. And so, it's one of those things that it needs to be done. But focusing on the tax aspect of, okay, I need more buckets. In our workshops, we talk about the tax attributes of money. We need to have 3 buckets of tax money. One of them is you got a bucket of taxable money. That's your IRA, your 403B, your 401k, your IRA, those type of things. Every time you take money out, it's a taxable event. And folks out there, 90% of their money is in a taxable account. Every time they pull money out, they're going to have to pay taxes on it. Well, I should say the first bucket is a tax deferred account. You take money out. The second bucket is a taxable account. That means you're paying taxes as you go. You got a mutual fund or you have stocks, you're going to pay tax on the dividend as they earn it. And people, that's usually they have maybe 10% of their money in that type of account. The third type of account is a tax-free bucket. And that's going to be your Roth IRAs and that type of investment over there. And so the problem is that everybody has almost all their money in that tax-deferred bucket, meaning they have to pay taxes all the time when they pull it out. And they don't have hardly anything in that tax-free bucket. One of our jobs as a fiduciary is to make sure that they have the right amount spread out between those 3 taxable buckets. And so that's part of our process and through our core retirement design is to make sure that we spread that out. How much can we get out of that tax deferred bucket into the tax free bucket? And that's a planning process. And if we can make that happen for folks and they give us enough time, and it's not an overnight fix, right? It may take 3 years. It may take 5 years. It may take 8 years to make it happen. But think about once you get to that point, a lot of folks can be in that tax-free situation where they never have to pay taxes again in retirement. Whoa. That's where you want to be. And again, that's what our core retirement design does. Give us a call, 863-285-3815 to schedule your core retirement phone consultation, where we'll walk you through that process and see if it makes sense for you to look at that as an option. That number again, 863-285-3815.
Talking today with Philip Statler. He is the president and CEO of Statler Financial Services in Sebring. And I am Jen Rezac alongside. And Philip, as we talk a little bit about this idea of the impact of taxes as we are preparing for retirement, I want to keep talking about some of the different ways in which this can play out. So people who delay Social Security until age 70, I just want to point out where this can all really kind of come together in a certain way. People who delay Social Security until age 70, and then they have to start taking money from their retirement savings at age 73, could be pushed into a higher tax bracket. This is what some analysts call the tax torpedo. It's one of those things where there's things that are kind of out of our control. When we have to start taking money or we have to start taking these benefits, this can happen. Is there anything we can do if we're a little bit concerned about being kind of torpedoed up into another tax bracket?
A lot of folks don't maximize their tax brackets.
Okay.
I sit down with folks all the time that are basically living off Social Security and not paying any taxes at all. And so a married couple in that situation is rough numbers. This is just kind of a rough guess here, but they're losing or could move out of their IRA or 401k into their Roth. A married couple could run somewhere between $27,000 to $35,000, depending upon their whole circumstance, from that traditional IRA into a Roth, and pay little to no tax on that money, depending on their circumstances again. And that's, again, part of our core retirement is to walk through the Roth conversion planning process to see, okay, what kind of plan can we put together to convert that IRA to that Roth where we'll ultimately end up paying no taxes down the road. And we look at tax brackets to make sure that we're not taking too much. Like I said, it's a plan. That plan may take 8 years to do. But once you get to that point, you know that you're done. You don't have to pay any more taxes.
Just again, there's so many strategies. There's so many things to think about that people just aren't often aware of, and creating a strategy to withdraw your retirement money and think about things like your Social Security. Being tax efficient here, this is just another component of an all-weather retirement income strategy. And Philip, the reality is our taxes are historically low right now, but seasons come, seasons go. We are getting closer to a potential season of higher taxes because of the expiration of our current tax rates. So winds of change are upon us here in our tax
they really are. And they're coming quick, right?
Yeah.
10 years didn't seem like it seemed like it was a lifetime. And now it's just a couple years away before that changes. I want to mention this too, Jen, is that folks that are charitably inclined,
yes,
that they give money to church or they give money to other organizations, that are 503c type corporations. There's some things that they can do to reduce their taxes and be able to use their IRA for those contributions. And so many people don't realize that, using that charitable distribution out of their IRAs are really missing the boat. And that's an area that we also look at when we start doing the Roth planning. We look at that as well. Somebody that gives $10,000, $20,000 a year away, well, they can't really itemize anymore. Mm-hmm. But if they're over that 70 and a half mark, they could use their IRA as that way and not pay any taxes on that money. So it's more than just Roth conversions. When we look at tax planning, we look at all aspects of planning to make sure that we're looking at the right things to help people reduce their taxes.
So, Philip, as we talk about that again, just what I said a few moments ago, today's tax rates could be the lowest that you'll see for the rest of your life. They went down with the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. We know that they're getting ready to expire. So really the time to act is now, because it's not a matter of if, but when taxes will go up. But, Philip, when we get into retirement, this is an area of life or a time of life, I should say, where we actually have more control over the taxes that we're paying than we ever have at any other time in our life. But it takes planning. We've got to be on top of this, and that's where strategies, we can learn about some of these strategies through your core retirement design.
Absolutely, Jen. You're so right. And I think you're probably absolutely right that we are right now in the lowest tax brackets you and I will probably ever see. They're going to go up by how much, nobody knows. But you have the opportunity right now to make some planning. Opportunities are there. You need to take advantage of them. And part of our core retirement design is help to do that. So give us a call, 863-285-3815, and schedule your core retirement phone consultation. Folks, it's 30 minutes. You can ask me whatever questions, and I will do my best to answer them. If I don't know the answer, I'll tell you. Look, here's where you can find that answer or something else. But it's that simple. It's 30 minutes. We'll answer your questions. We'll make sure that you are on the path you need to be on for the retirement you always dreamed of. Make sure the timelines kind of match up. Again, that number is 863-285-3815. Give us a call. Let's don't waste any opportunities to reduce our taxes. That number one more time, 863-285-3815.
All these different economic pressures like inflation and tax increases, even a lack of financial knowledge, all these factors mean a lot of people are worried if they'll be able to afford to retire. The reality is we can't predict where the economy will go from here, so that's why it's important to create this all-weather retirement income strategy that can handle any and all economic conditions. We'll get back into it on the other side of the break. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show.
Do you have a retirement plan but would like a second opinion? Call Philip Statler today, 863-285-3815. Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815. Remember that first paycheck when you started working all those years ago and you looked at the net amount and thought, whoa, what happened here? Well, it could be this way with your retirement accounts. You know how much you've saved, but if you haven't planned for Uncle Sam, you could come up short in retirement. With tax laws constantly changing, there's a lot you need to know to make sure you're not paying more than your fair share. Philip Statler and the Statler Financial Team have helped hundreds of families plan for retirement for more than 20 years. They'll help you create a plan that shows you how taxes could affect you now and in the future. Set up a visit with Philip Statler and the team at Statler Financial. Just give them a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Make sure you know how these changes could affect you so you can avoid some of those whoa moments in retirement. Call 863-285-3815. Firm offers insurance services but may not give tax advice. Advisory services are offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services. We cannot predict where the economy will go from here, and that's why we're talking about this all-weather retirement income strategy that can handle any and all economic conditions, because, boy, anything can happen with our economy.
If things like the market volatility you're seeing now, or the inflation and tax increases, if those things keep you up at night, then that means that you probably don't have a plan in place to navigate through those things. And you might not be working with the right type of financial professional who can help you develop an income strategy that can weather any of those financial storms that are on the horizon, Jen.
This all-weather retirement strategy should include a couple of things like understanding your time horizon and determining your spending needs. Philip, let's talk about why those two things are so important, understanding our age and what our spending patterns are likely to be.
I think most of us realize our age, and sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad, right? But we know where we are on that spectrum. What we don't always understand is our life expectancy. How long are we going to live? And I think if you look at a husband and wife and I haven't seen the updated statistics, but they used to always say, look, if a husband and wife retire at 65, then there's like a 90% chance that one of them will live well into their 90s. We want to be prepared for that. You need to understand how long you could live or how long your spouse could live, because you need to be prepared to take care of the two of you, no matter who's left and how long they live. You need to have that locked down. And I think probably the hardest part is that next thing you said, and that's really determining spending, because when you had a paycheck, it was easy to budget. In retirement, you got to pay your property taxes, you got to pay your insurance, you got to maintain your automobiles. There's all those things you still have to do, pay the light bill. But then there's all these other things that you want to do. You didn't retire to sit in front of the TV and waste the days away, right? And so we need to have a realistic budget. I know that's the B word. People don't like that word. But,
they don't.
But we need to have that realistic budget in place as to, how many cruises are we going to take this year? How many trips are we going to take to see the grandkids? All those things we need to kind of lay out so that we can then plan how we're going to get there. And if we don't know what the end result is, it's kind of hard to put that plan together, Jen.
Right. To your point also, when you said, people don't necessarily want to retire and just spend all their time in front of the TV. If you are wanting to maintain your current lifestyle and maybe go out to eat at the frequency that you're used to, maybe do a couple of extra things now that you have that time that you didn't have when you were working, none of these things are going to happen by accident. You've got to go in and crunch the numbers. You've got to go in and do the planning. You've got to think about things like your taxes and the implications of your taxes, because, Philip, this is another thing that changes. It's a little bit different with how we approach taxes in retirement versus during our working years, and we don't want to forget to include taxes in all those numbers that we're crunching as we are trying to prepare for retirement.
Folks out there, when they retire, 90% of their net worth is in that IRA or that 401k, which means every time that they need to dip into that fund, they have to pay some taxes. And, if you wait long enough and it grows and grows and grows, and you wait until you have to take out the required minimum distribution, now you have that forced distribution. The IRS says you got to take money out and pay taxes on it. And I would rather folks have a plan in place to deal with those now before they get to that required minimum distribution phase.
We also want to be thinking about our risk tolerance. This is another area that changes, Philip, when we are leaving our accumulation years behind. During your working years, that's when you're building up that savings. You're accumulating money in your retirement savings. Now, things are a little bit different in terms of how aggressive we want to be with our different investments when we aren't still contributing every paycheck.
You're absolutely right, Jim, because when you're working, you're contributing to that account. It may not always be growing because the market could be, having havoc on it, but you're putting money in, and ultimately you get paid back for that money that you put in there, right? And so when you're retired, it's the other way around. Now you're relying on that account to pay you. Mm-hmm. And so you're taking money out of that account on a regular basis so that you can have the retirement you always dreamed of. Like you said, you don't want to sit there and watch TV all day. You want to go do the things that you wanted to do in retirement. And what I see is that, especially that first 10 years after you retire, that's when you're usually healthy enough to do the things you want to do. And so typically we spend a little bit more money in those first 10 or 15 years. And we have to have a plan, to really deal with that and have those goals in place of what do we want our money to do for us? Because that is the big deal. Our core retirement design really wraps around all of those things and kind of puts a bow around them and says, okay, here it is. This is the plan to get you to the retirement you always dreamed of.
We don't want to set it and forget it. We want to make sure everything stays up to date. We can't just create this strategy, this plan one time and then never go back and look at it again, because, Philip, not only do things change in our economic world and things change with our investments and that type of thing, things change in our personal family situation, and that means we've got to stay on top of the beneficiary designations and all of that as well.
And that's one reason, Jen, that we are actively making changes in investments and in portfolios and that type of thing. But it also means that we're talking to our clients. We're meeting with them once to twice a year, face to face or over Zoom, to make sure that we've still got all the pieces in place and that nothing's changed. Things happen. We have to make some audibles here and there, but that's why you want to be working with a professional. That's what they do. They deal with folks who are either getting really close to retirement or have already retired, because now you don't have a paycheck coming in. The way we do that distribution planning is way different than when you were working, putting money into IRAs and making investments and that kind of stuff. It's a different mindset, and it takes somebody that's really all they do,
right,
is deal with that distribution phase of retirement. That's a big difference. And people don't think about that when they get ready to retire, putting that plan in place. And so I would say that, dealing with somebody that has a fiduciary responsibility to their clients to do what's in their best interest is a big deal. That really is the focus of our practices, making sure that when folks get ready to retire, that they're going to have that income that they're going to need month in and month out. And again, that's why we work so hard developing our core retirement design to help people be in a position to have that retirement and to live it and enjoy it and not have to worry about the money aspects of retirement, because that can be a big cloud that sits over people's head. Is it going to be enough? Can I do the things I want to do? And we answer all of that within our core retirement design. It starts with that phone call, Jen. We make it as simple as possible. Yep. It is the initial contact is we set up a 30-minute phone consultation where we'll get on the phone with you, answer your questions, make sure that where you are is where you think you are, right? In the whole scheme of things, that you are where you think you are, and make sure that you're on the path to retire. And sometimes, Jen, that's a conversation that can be a little thorny, right? Because people want to retire when they want to retire. And sometimes you have to say, look, it doesn't make sense for you to retire at X. It makes more sense for you to work a couple more years to Y. So those are the hard conversations we have to have sometimes to make sure that people are where they need to be when it comes to retirement. But all of that we go through in our core retirement design, and it starts with that core retirement phone consultation. Give us a call at 863-285-3815. Folks, it's the best 30 minutes you'll spend. 863-285-3815. Don't waste the opportunity. Give us a call. Get on our schedule. Love to have that 30-minute conversation with you. Again, that number is 863-285-3815.
You've been listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services. That number, one more time, is 863-285-3815. Be sure to tune in again next time for more insights from Philip, and we'll talk to you then. Have a great week.
Information provided during the Statler Financial Radio Show is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute investment, tax, or legal advice. Information has been obtained from sources that are deemed to be reliable, but their accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Individuals should thoroughly review the contract for specific details of the product features and costs. Income payments and withdrawals from deferred annuities are generally taxable as ordinary income in the year they are taken. All investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. No strategy is guaranteed to be successful.